this week has been good bipartisan cooperation and a string of
Are you good? Mitch?
Okay, Mitch?
Just checking.
Anything else you want to say, or should we just go back to your office? Do you want to say anything else to the press?
Our greatest threats are lesser evils, joining hands to hold us back. Worried looks from heartless people, tearful words from soulless hacks, faux concern from thieves and rapists, thoughts and prayers from Epstein's friends, moral laws from fascist racists, healthcare laws from Cigna's pens. Bought and sold progressive leaders say we're starving much too loud, but all I see are meaty speakers talking down to hungry crowds. Squad and all their sleazy leeches feast on workers plump with clout, stalk them through the tallest grassroots, track the unions, drag them down. Reap their labor, eat their labor, none too proud to suck it out, none too shamed to freeze your wage, then beg for change like fund me now. Rush me $20 or our democracy will surely drown. Rush me $20 so we can cluster bomb 100 towns. Rush me $20 and once you've emptied out your bank account, you'll get to say you've made us proud and BlackRock gets to take your house. Just rows and rows of perfect clones of vacant homes, raised to bones, then carried off by corporate crows, beneath a gaping sky where nothing lives and nothing grows, but hungry money swells and bloats, and money-hungry grifters gloat to fleece the coats and trust and votes of sheep and sacrificial goats. They coax their hopes like open throats, where leeches feast on helpless hosts. The offer sees their beast invoked. The BlackRock altar belches smoke. It rises that the world may know they've christened 2 new CEOs, one for press and public show, and one that just the board will know, who wears a crown of migrants' hands, who smiles when the cities flood, who has been anointed head to toe in workers' rights and children's blood, who bought the bill that soaked organic vegetables in fracking mud, who made his billions banking on technologies for tracking us, who filmed us every day as we kept smiling where the camera was, and streaming from our cancer clusters, chatting up some Langley bugs who take the time to listen when you think that no one gives a shit. They're nice enough to help you sew your Discord into stripper clips, lead you to an act that they have planned out like a business trip, show you where the buzzwords go when manifesting manuscripts. It's manufactured terrorism, crafted by precision tip, sanded past all recognition, ground beneath clandestine grit, carefully conducted by the feds in the orchestral pit, watched by millions, none the wiser, smiling wide, applauding it. So who yells fire in the theater when they don't smell the hint of smoke? What audience enwrapped and eager rises up as one to go and flees as from some gnarled reaper, leaves the actors there alone? Who would hear one frantic teacher, warnings blared through tears and foam, say, rob yourselves of entertainment, leave your seats, but don't go home. The war outside is greater than these actors care to show. We've one night left before containment. Early dawn, they'll drop the dome. The streets tonight need all your anger. Playing now, the fall of Rome.
People still owe money. People still owe money. No. People still owe money. People still owe money.
It looks to me as though you learned such a difficult decision. I bet you finally feel like you're home.
Right in the center where the halves meet. You were proud of incremental half speeds. You were getting down in the AOC dance line, hands tied, nodding to the backbeat. You'll Secret Service dive in front of any representative alive, being asked for the very bare minimum. And you'll turn into that same kind of hard right villain you detested should we mention they could ever muster maximum. Cause liberal denial's such a lofty ataraxia, where morals take a back seat, not up in the cab, but in hidden panels made by federal human traffickers. If you trust the autopilot, then you're just a sleeping passenger, passively accepting that it isn't us the bastards serve, making peace with all the evil walking on this rancid earth, seeking unity with those who bound your hands at birth, glancing up at fascists on a bloody dais thinking they just need a push. Not a holy man, but I'm praying for a burning bush. Yeah, I know you'd love to look away, but love, you need to look. There are many massacres the country manufactured that will never make the books. Now here's your fucking hook.
It looks to me as though you learned to love your prison. I guess you'd say you made it your own. Who knew that freedom's such a difficult decision? I bet you finally feel like you're home.
Home on the range of excuses. Justify some fracking, water down pollution, paint a fresh coat of bipartisan charm over backroom collusion. Your consent is being manufactured by illusions, marketing executives in federal seclusion, working day and night to keep you just the side of lucid, and too beat down for calling out abuses. So fuck all these progressives who can speak on revolution once they empty all your powder out and spit on all your fuses. I prefer to judge a leader not by quality of tweets, but the six-figure book deals she chooses, donors he betrays, and donors that he'd gladly take a bullet before he refuses, slogans he reuses, buzzwords he produces, then he spews like mucus. Well, two can play at that. So here's the inner dialogue of every time I snap, and it's fine-tuned to ruthless, and saying politics are useless. Just a bunch of loose lips tweeting cute shit, power suits, taxpayer booze trips, bunker at the ready when the shoe flips, and there will be no news clips, there will just be
People still owe money. People still owe money. No.
It looks to me as though you learned to love your prison. I guess you'd say you made it your own. Who knew that freedom's such a difficult decision? I bet you finally feel like you're home.
People still owe money. People still owe money.
Hey, what about you, eyeballs? What did you see?
It couldn't have been me, sir. I was front row in my AOC t-shirt, foie gras sucking on a press release, sir. My head down, fourth shot, good little sheep, sir. Sit down, sweetie. The adults are gonna speak first. They trust the science and they're terrified of research. Here to thank our healthcare heroes, they've been feeding to the burnout, feet first. Until suddenly they dip mid-shift, take a header off a bridge. Such a shame, they were really such a sweet nurse. Now they'll never get the card and the cold slice of pizza meant to thank them for their teamwork. Now they'll never get the baggie full of checks mixed, which would be the one reward they'd see for the moms they had to intubate, and the countless cries of grief since we've been haunted by the specter of the C word.
Now all the applause for our healthcare heroes rings a very hollow note because we played it out like Freebird. See, add the ones and zeros in our fragile checks and balances are checks for all the wealthy who have such unholy talents that we think it's patriotic that we all got zero balances. And re-elect Pelosi so she'll face our toughest challenges. Which is analogous to water for a drowning man. Nancy disregards our impoverished with a spiteful and dismissive little waving of her withered hand. Cause 500,000 freezing on the streets is Biden's winter plan. And I bet you swore they told you you were voting for a different man. But really all you wanted was a different man. It didn't make a fucking difference if he finishes the previous inhabitant's agenda and starts auctioning protected land. Biden's born to leap at any war a donor's check demands. Turns out that you can't cure greed once it infects a man. Once they lose respect for human life and focus all their fucking efforts on the oil baron rescue plan.
Who are these people?
Who are these people? What's up, everyone? We're back. It's Tuesday night. It's July now. And we're like into July. You know, we were at the end of June and closing out the first 6 months of the year last time. Feels like we're already like into the second half of the year. Kieran Pine, thank you very much. Where are these people? They're right here. Everybody that needs to be here is here already or will be here soon. So good to see everybody. Thank you, Morgan C. Good to see you. How are you? Good to see everyone. Glad everyone is coming to hang out at the live stream. Okay, I have got a ton of stuff to get to tonight. I'm going to read through Whitney Webb's article. First, we're going to have some fun, and we're going to talk about the crap that happened on Twitter about Whitney Webb's article. And then I'll read about an hour of it. I'll get through as much as I can, and then we're going to get to a Fuck Israel segment, because we do that every week, because they keep murdering people and stealing land, so we have to until they stop doing that. And now they're even talking about Jordan. That's just wonderful. I don't like hearing that, but what are we going to do? We also are going to do a quick lightning round segment. I wasn't planning on it, and then more stuff popped up. I'm like, all right, I guess we got 3-4 stories. We can do that. Censorship in the UK and the EU. Insane. Wow. Accord Lord, good to see you. Topher, it is not 2030 yet. It feels like 2030 in some ways. The Agenda 2030 is certainly moving its way in. Some people seem to be distracted like it's 2010 or like it's 2021. Being surprised by Democrats and by what caring what Democrats are doing. So we're not going to talk about that here. We're going to talk about Polymarket, and we've been talking about Polymarket and these prediction markets, quote unquote, even though they're not really prediction markets. Before we do, like Kieran did, support independent media because we need it more than ever. All right, the ways to do that if you're able to, and it means if not, share the show. It's all we need. I understand times are really tough right now. If you're able to and you want to, you got Cash App, $ Indie News Network, code-v.com/Indie News Network. That's what Kieran did. It pops up on screen. PayPal.me/Indie News Network. And that is, as friends and family do that there. And then monthly, if you want to do a monthly subscription, you can go at patreon.com/Indie News Network or over on Substack at indiemediatoday.com. We're live over there right now. Hi to everybody watching over on Substack, as well as over at INNnewsletter.com. That's another newsletter I publish too. And of course, the name of the show, Indie News Now Live. That's because there's a whole website called IndieNewsNow.com that I set up that's an RSS aggregator, ad-free, and we stream live there 24/7. And there is a merch store that you can get a cool merch at. So, all right, and by the way, thank you to Golden Monarch, brother. Finally joined the list this week. And that's our Wall of Fame. Everyone that supports our network gets up on the Wall of Fame. So if you want to see your name up there, you know the ways to do it. They're right there. Thank you, really. I really appreciate everything everybody does to help us. It matters because we're completely user funded. All right, we're gonna get into the fun part. All right, I'm gonna start with the thumbnail. And normally I don't make my thumbnails in advance, but lately I've been doing that. It's been better on my mental health because after the stream is over, when I do the editing, like I cut everything up, and then at the end of it, I'm like Ugh, and now I got to make 5 thumbnails, one for every clip. This way I make them in advance, knowing what we're going to cover, and it's just easier on my brain. So now, what's happening here? Ratioed. And we're going to talk about how Whitney Webb, the great Whitney Webb Indie Media Award honoree, all right, published something about Polymarket, a new article. She made a tweet, and we heard from Nikita Beier. You're going to hear all about who he is and the hilarity that ensued beyond. So let's get into it. Whitney writes on July 1st, this was literally the day after we did our last show, the morning after. I'm like, oh shit. So this is already 6 days old. All right. We've recently been quiet because Mark Goodwin and I have been working to write the most comprehensive investigation into Polymarket's origins and ambitions to date. We found that Polymarket's official origin story, that Shane Copland founded the company alone in 2020 and then built the company in his bathroom, is a lie. Polymarket really started years earlier as another company called Token Bank that was deeply tied to Israeli interests, specifically a crypto company founded by Benjamin Netanyahu's niece and nephew. Seriously, Copland has actively tried to obfuscate this company from his story, and that's not the only thing either. In part 1 of this 2-part series, we will unravel the real history of Polymarket, directly connecting the company to Peter Thiel's efforts to resurrect controversial DARPA programs from its now defunct Information Awareness Office. And like 2 years ago, I covered an article from Whitney about total information awareness. That was the program that was a DARPA program that it's like Morgan Freeman and Batman, where they would be able to map out the entire city and see and hear everything, know where everybody is based on signals. Okay, so what she's saying here is that Polymarket appears to have been chosen by Thiel and his associates to succeed in resurrecting DARPA's policy analysis market, where another Thiel-linked company, Augur, had previously failed. So he's already been trying this. Stay tuned for part 2, where we explore the current influence of the prediction markets and Polymarket, including how an insidious effort to have prediction markets replace representative democracy as a governance model is already slowly being implemented by the White House. And yes, Whitney is a TLAV contributor, TLAV also being an Indie Media Award honoree. That's the LastAmericanVagabond.com. For all your LastAmericanVagabond.needs, as Steve likes to say. That's one of my favorite things he says. So there's a link to part 1, and I'm going to read part 1. I'm going to get into reading as much of part 1 as we can get to. What ends up happening after that is hilarity ensues. Now, she publishes this at, 8:30 in the morning, 11:30 in the morning on July 1st. Well, the next morning, after it has gotten a little bit of traction, this guy, I think we've talked about him once before, Nikita Beier, he is the head of product for Twitter. And I looked a little bit further into him, and he's taken 2 other products to sale and sold them to large tech companies. He's a tech bro, Silicon Valley, who started working as head of product for Twitter July 1st in 2025. So he's been there literally a year. Thinking this way is a form of mental illness. Now, he's done mental gymnastics to cover for Israel multiple times. Everybody kind of knows this. All right. And right away, it's weird. First of all, why is the head of product of this platform commenting on an independent journalist's tweet about Polymarket and Peter Thiel? What's the link? There really doesn't appear to be any, but orders appear to have gone out to attack Whitney and to try to attack her reporting with ad hominem attacks. Notice he does not do anything to actually attack the substance of anything she's written. It's just a form of mental illness. And then that's his also code for anti-Semitism, of course. Everything is anti-Semitism because, of course, Netanyahu's niece and nephew were involved directly in, and Whitney will show you that link in her article. So my response to him, I saw this immediately. Now, when I found this, Nikita had about 400 likes and he had about 80 responses. And I'm like, oh, he's going to get ratioed something fierce. And I said, I see Steve's ratio wasn't enough for you this week. Should be interesting. Good luck. You're a clown. Now, what I was referring to here is that Steve Poikinen from Slow News Day and AM Wake Up, who we co-stream every weekday morning from 10 a.m. to about 1 p.m. Eastern. Steve had put up a thing earlier in the week about Flock. So Flock had posted a thing about catching kidnappers and doing mental gymnastics about Flock. And Steve ratios Flock. First of all, Flock's post initially has a couple of thousand likes, 100 likes. Steve's has 12,000. Then Nikita Beier weighs in. This is a few days before. The whole meme about Flock being bad was likely started by foreign adversaries. It wasn't the first time narratives to destroy American municipal infrastructure were boosted. Crazy that something benign as license plate readers on public roads has turned into the boogeyman. And then he gets, of course, community noted on his own platform, which is hilarious. All right. And once again, Steve says, wow, guy, you suck at running cover for the surveillance state, and ratios him. And Steve then says on his show this week, I don't think I've ever ratioed anybody that badly in my life. And you look at, he had 1.4 million views on his post. All right. And 1,200 likes. Really, really bad. Nobody's liking what he's doing. And he's getting a ton of responses. He's getting ratioed this way as well. 1,400 responses, all telling him he sucks and that he's lying and he doesn't know what he's talking about. So that was 4 days prior to this whole situation with Whitney. So I saw in the morning, or at 5 o'clock, oh boy, this is not going to end well for you. You're a clown. And literally 4 hours later, he's getting ratioed. Now the comments are already outweighing the likes. And the likes aren't going up and the comments are going crazy. Now, I looked recently and I think there's 12 to 1,400 comments and still only 911 or 912 likes, something like that. I'll bring up the current tweet and we can see where it's at right now. Here, 910, 1,400. There you go. So people are really not liking what this guy's doing. People are wondering why he's doing what he's doing. Worse is that his own tweet gets community noted that says there is nothing false in what Whitney Webb wrote. Everything she said is true and has sources to back it up. That was Grok. So somebody said, Grok, is this true? So Bizarro Baby points out that he's now somehow figured out how to remove, because he's the head of product, he removed the community note that was put up correcting his nonsense about this being mental illness, because it's not. It's an incredibly sourced, well-detailed article with facts, receipts, times, and dates. It's an investigation. And you can draw from it whatever you like. All right. So that's one of the other things that happened there. All right. And then somebody else points out that here's another tweet where they were showing from Polymarket that there was an influencer campaign right now happening with Polymarket that people aren't disclosing. Look at the quotes of this post to see who's being paid. And all you had to do is look at literally the quote tweets on that post. That was part of the rules to get paid. All right. This is illegal and a community note is necessary due to their lack of disclosure. That also got removed because they're hiding the conflicts of interest on behalf of their own advertisers. Gross. Here's more receipts showing that in June 2025, Twitter named Polymarket as its official prediction market partner. The collaboration integrates Polymarket's probability data, with Twitter's social feed and Grok AI insights to provide users with data-driven, real-time annotations on current events. Except that that's all that data can be manipulated. There's no regulation on it. We'll get to that in a minute. Advertising and affiliates. Polymarket has actively advertised on Twitter by establishing affiliations with third-party accounts such as news aggregators and influencers, individuals that have large followings that receive badges or paid partnership labels to share Polymarket odds. This strategy allows Polymarket to leverage these accounts for broad reach, though investigations have noted that some affiliated accounts have spread misinformation. Nah. No way, right? And then we get to my friend Sir Escanor, the Hopium Slayer. He is spicy. He can get people a little upset sometimes. I like his reporting. In this case, he had the receipts months and months prior to this on who was working with Polymarket. So what he pointed out here was that I told you months ago, nobody listened. Whitney Webb just confirmed what was already in the thread. Polymarket, the network behind it, the affiliates profiting from your outrage. He's got one part of it, all of it documented, all of it receipted, all of it ignored by the people who should have known better. That includes the names you still follow and defend. I don't follow and defend them because they're all blocked in my feed, like Nick Shirley and Ryan Matta. Okay, the thread stands. The receipts stand. Now, Ryan Matta's big on the anti-imperialist side, but he's not in it. He's more on the infiltration side, I feel like, from the other side. All right? The only thing that changes is that you can't pretend you didn't know anymore. Thank you for that, Whitney Webb. Team Truth has no room for people who knew and stayed quiet anyway. No heroes, no halos, and hopium. Amen. Because all of these people are flawed. They're mostly bought off. And so what we're going to go through here really quickly is this appendix. And he goes through this influencer mesh. But this is a long, long thread where he talks about inside the market that bets on you, not the world. There's a comforting little lie floating around the internet that prediction markets just predict the future. No, they don't predict the future. They literally engineer it. And they don't run on insider analysis. They run on you, your outrage, your impulses, your reactions, the dopamine jolts every time some influencer drops a breaking narrative grenade into your feed. By the way, if you ever see anybody that publishes stuff like this regularly, block them. It's a propaganda op. This is not a market, just a lab and drag. A behavioral casino you never agreed to enter, and the house always wins, as with every casino. All right, so here's the behavioral furnace. So this is a long thread, and I will again include this after the thing's over. After the show's over, you'll be able to see this in the Substack linked. But this dialogue, you know, the whole thing came out about dialogue recently. January 6th, he was talking about dialogue and that influencers conference that he was that Teal and his associates were holding to try to bring mainstream influencers into their mix and push narrative. This is what I wanted to get to, was this Polymarket influence mesh. All right. Here we go. Inside the market that bets on you, not the world, like I said. So here's the appendix. Here's all the people who are partners, affiliates, confirmed, are self-disclosed partner promotions affiliates, referrals, or are part of the badge incentive network. So if you are sharing any of these, you are now sharing people that partner with Polymarket that are trying to rig polling, that are trying to rig the outcome of specific events in order to make profit for themselves. Sometimes they don't even care which way it gets rigged, but sometimes they do. Take into account like the Massey thing with Ed Gallerin, where in the last couple of days, it was the Polymarket shift that people saw, that all of a sudden, all the big money that was going that way, people realized, oh shit, now Massey's in trouble. It was an indicator, but it was one where there was a bunch of money that was being all of a sudden bet on Gallerin. Unusual Whales is one a lot of people share. I've seen that, shared a bunch. Around 1 million followers, official language partner. So all these people, Eric Pan, Moist, whatever Moist is, Chamath Palahiptia, I don't know what that verse is. 1.5 million followers, okay. Pleb Reporter. Okay, I don't even know who any of these accounts are, but they're big. You see 50,000 plus, 200,000 plus. History and Memes, paid posts on markets. I said, there's Cat Turd, right? You see again, when you mouse over now he should be blocked, Nick Shirley. I'm surprised he didn't block me for my investigation. Benny Johnson, blocked. Timcast should be blocked. I don't know. Tim Pool is. Candace, I should be blocked. Again, notice I'm not following any of these accounts. None of them are in my follows. Matta should be blocked. No, he's also not blocked. That's weird. It should be showing more. Nate Silver. Also, so a lot of these people. Midas Touch, who was with the Diplo. I don't follow any of these people. Donald Trump Jr. That's not the junior account. And then, of course, the founder or CEO, Shane Copland, the kid. Right, Ethereum since 14. So he's a crypto bro. And, of course, the Fed Slop Raws alerts. Awful. I don't follow any of these accounts. All these people are being paid to influence Twitter in a heavy way with large followings. Probably botted to a point. Morgan Ariel, I've heard of her. Okay. Christian cultural commentator. Lioness for Jesus. Okay. Sure. Jake Paul, people know who that guy is. Right? So all these people are being used to promote these these prediction markets. But like I said, they're not prediction markets. Here's other people. Sam Parker pushing this nonsense. All right. So shout out to Sir Escanor for exposing all this long before a lot of other people did. And also a reminder that we've been on this Polymarket stuff because back in March, we read a popular information article about how, they're betting on when we were going to invade Iran or bomb Iran, somebody from the inside. They were doing insider trading to rig these markets. And it turns out that Donald Trump Jr. is an advisor to both Polymarket and their competitor Kalshi. Don't know how that's possible, but somehow he's getting paid by both. So, that's the first part of it. And I figured it'd take me about 20 minutes to get through all of the nonsense that happened on Twitter and my hellos and intros to everybody. Next, I'm going to get to reading the Whitney Webb article that caused all of this stir. Because I started reading it. It's really freaking good. But yeah, I mean, it's basically, it's a gambling market. All right. So the article starts out, this is my thumbnail for it about the secret history of Polymarket. A read through and commentary. All right. So Mark Goodwin and Whitney Webb at Unlimited Hangout wrote this article together. It says it's a 55-minute read. That means it's a lot longer than that. Right. So the secret history of Polymarket, she said the part one of a two-part series exposing the truth behind the world's most popular prediction market and its dark ambitions to alter both markets and representative government forever. So I'm gonna start here. Let's blow this up. Shane Copland, who is now the world's youngest self-made billionaire, quote unquote, is the public face of what purports to be the world's largest crypto-powered prediction market, Polymarket. Copland and his alleged arch rival, Tariq Mansour of the competing prediction market platform Kalshi, recently buried the hatchet to create a new venture capital firm called 5cc Capital. a reference to the section of the Commodity Exchange Act which is currently used to regulate prediction markets. The fund is aimed at bulking up the infrastructure for what has rapidly become an insurgent digital industry. That means lobbying's coming. Since the early days of Donald Trump's second term, prediction markets like Polymarket and Kalshi have largely been told to police themselves. This comes courtesy of the current head of the Consumer Financial Trade CFTC, Consumer Finance and Trade Commission, Michael Seelig, who was previously a lawyer representing major cryptocurrency industry clients. Seelig became the CFTC chair only after the Trump admin rescinded the nomination of Brian Quintenz, who then sat on Kalshi's board and worked for the crypto venture team at Mark Andreessen's firm, Andreessen Horowitz. So basically, no matter what, you were going to get a favorable ruling and a favorable lean towards these people. Andreessen Horowitz has notably backed Kaplan's new prediction market VC firm, 5cc Capital, and is also heavily invested in Kalshi. So you've got a Mark Andreessen stake in this now. During the past couple of years, Polymarket and Kalshi have become important components of reporting on global finance and politics. This is partially due to their extensive cultivation of wide-ranging media partnerships, like I just showed you. For instance, in the case of Polymarket, the company now boasts partnerships with the Wall Street Journal and its parent company Dow Jones, as well as Yahoo Finance, Substack, and the live streaming platform Party, which I've never heard of. While these partnerships have been framed as an effort to further legitimize prediction markets, concerns have been raised that these media partnerships could be used to intentionally manipulate these very markets via the implantation of false and misleading stories. And she links here to a Columbia Journal Review article about Polymarket spreading misinformation on Twitter. Concerns like these have dogged these new prediction markets just as their star has risen. Insider trading allegations, including from the platforms themselves, have shown how prediction markets can be abused by traders with insider access to market movers and policymakers. Now, with Congress trying to get involved, both Polymarket and Kalshi have announced new efforts to improve market integrity without the need for government intervention. No, guys, don't bother. We got this. However, the effects of their efforts remain to be seen, as several of the new measures are based on traders self-reporting their conflicts of interests, which we know how well that's going to work out. Okay? Concerns about widespread insider trading have only been exacerbated by both the White House's open dismissal of these concerns, as well as the Trump family's close ties to both Polymarket and Kalshi. How this is not a massive story and how the corporate media isn't covering this conflict of interest on a daily basis, I don't understand. For instance, Trump's son, Donald Trump Jr., we know is both a strategic advisor to Kalshi and also advises Polymarket. And again, there's a link to an NPR article about that. Trump Jr. is also a major investor in Polymarket via his venture capital firm, 1789 Capital. And I believe Descent and Bloom will know that reference. They're part of the Rockbridge Network. She did an amazing article about Rockbridge Network we read. The evidence of insider trading on these platforms, particularly in cases where it is directly related to Trump's most consequential decisions, is now widely acknowledged by mainstream media. While the ascendance and arguably the normalization of insider trading are being treated as unintended flukes of these markets, there's an argument to be made that they're operating exactly as intended. That's not the bug, that's the feature. Some of the evidence for that argument can be found in what appears to be Polymarket's true origins. This is where we get into it. Despite being nominally founded in 2020, Kaplan, in founding his company, was admittedly following the model of the big tech billionaires he'd admired as a teen, particularly those who created their flagship companies by rebranding and privatizing controversial military programs from the George W. Bush era for maximum profit and seemingly to advance even darker ambitions. And she's got receipts. Previous reports from Unlimited Hangout have explored how Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook gave new life to the Pentagon's LifeLog program the day it was shut down, and how Peter Thiel's Palantir was created as a privatized version of the Pentagon's surveillance dragnet program, Total Information Awareness. In this two-part series, we now examine how Shane Coplin appears to have rebranded and privatized yet another failed Pentagon program from that same era. And how Thiel is also involved here as well, I believe. Now, what she's referring to here is an article she wrote about J.D. Vance 2 years ago, where she broke down Peter Thiel and how he became at the center and forefront of pushing J.D. Vance toward the vice presidential nomination and selection with Trump. I read that article on my show 2 years ago, and I made a graphic that actually laid out Thiel's relation and all the players and organizations that were involved. And now you're adding in Kalshi and these prediction algorithm markets, or whatever they call them, the PAMs. By following in the footsteps of his admitted idol Zuckerberg, and then backed by funding from Thiel-linked sources, Coplin has managed to resurrect the policy analysis market, or PAM, like I just said, one of the most controversial Pentagon programs from its now defunct Information Awareness Office. Tellingly, his efforts to launch Polymarket included direct communication with one of the main architects of the PAM program, and he was also greatly influenced by another apparent Thiel-linked effort to resurrect PAM that failed, which she also mentioned in her tweet. Importantly, Coplin's apparent rebrand of PAM, often referred to in the past as the terrorism futures market, is about more than just reaping mega profits in an era where insider trading and financial corruption are flourishing with the White House's blessing. As will be explored in part 2 of this series, an ulterior motive directly linked to Coplin's efforts aims to advance an extremely dystopian governance model that is of great interest to the tech billionaires now closely linked to Coplin and the dominant prediction market companies such as Peter Thiel and Mark Andreessen. I'm going to pause there for a second, say hey to everybody. Again, we're reading the Whitney Webb, Mark Goodwin article from unlimitedhangout.com about Polymarket and its insidious, its origins and its insidious nature as well, where she then gives a brief history of the American prediction markets. And I'm going to glaze over this part because while it's important, I think a lot of this will come to light as we continue to read the article. So I'm going to skip to the next part where we get back into the late 90s and into 2000s. We talk about 92, 94. All this is important. This is an important exchange right here. They talk about the history of prediction markets. So the world's first betting market was called the Foresight Exchange, right? Where they traded something called credit bills. It was like fake money, kind of like cryptocurrency almost, right? Everyone had play money. Hanson's co-founders, all right, were employees of the Canadian government, Alberta Research Council. All right. James and Morgan became interested in this paper that outlined the concept of idea futures and decided to make this ideas a reality. Right. So he had written a paper for visiting researcher for the Foresight Institute. So Foresight became this prediction market. So then that evolved into, and people remember the Hollywood Stock Exchange, HSX. Again, with fake money, they'll give you a certain amount of fake money and you can invest in certain actors or movies or whatever, and then grow your portfolio. All right. Guess who was involved in this? And I know Golden Monarch remembers. Max Kaiser of the Bitcoin lunatic and RT fame. All right. Movies were incidentally the focus of the world's next prediction market, the Hollywood Stock Exchange market, HSX. Founded in 1996. Again, prediction markets go back 30 years. Described by the New York Times as a virtual stock market of fake stocks and fake money with such a fanatic following that players are offering hundreds of real dollars to buy a make-believe portfolio, a digital basket of actors and movies. It was insane. Created by two men who were at that point best known as veterans of Wall Street, but had since become better known for other pursuits, like Max Kaiser, who went on to become best known for his early and often eccentric evangelism of Bitcoin, while the other co-founder, Michael Burns, is now best known for his top role at Lionsgate Films. So there's a biography about him. So this is really interesting. Guess who else ties into this? Our Commerce Secretary, Mr. Nutlick. In 2001, something else happened in 2001. Along with its critically important patents, which was acquired by Cantor Fitzgerald, the American financial services firm long held by the current Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, a.k.a. Nutlick. Lutnick and Cantor had planned to do away with HSX's play money and lead the push to turn speculation on movie performance into real money via commodity futures contracts. In other words, they sought to pioneer a film futures market. Paul G. Anderson explained the concept of Cantor's proposed film futures market as follows, quote, unlike the various physical commodities that trade on futures exchanges, such as corn, oil, and wheat, the relevant commodity in a film futures contract is an intangible financial instrument, a DBOR, whose financial value is tied directly to the domestic box office revenue, that's DBOR, domestic box office revenue, from ticket sales of the underlying motion picture. Thus, any film futures contract is an agreement to buy or sell DBORs at an agreed-upon price, regardless of the market value at the time that cash settlement is due. All right, that's like options in a way. In this respect, film futures are akin to futures contracts for stock indexes or U.S. Treasury bonds and other non-traditional commodities that are commonplace on most futures exchanges. That's interesting. Again, it's a little bit technical financial speak, but they were trying to take fake money and now introduce real money and figure out how do we regulate this so they let us open it up to people bidding real money on this stuff. And he just saw dollar signs in his eyes. Cantor's initial push for the film futures market was closely related to the efforts of the Republican-led Congress to pass the Commodity Futures Modernization Act in 2001, a law which facilitated, among other things, the exotic trading instruments that later played a significant role in the 2008 economic crisis, meaning derivative swaps, all right, credit default swaps. Those are the exotic trading instruments that Whitney's referring to. But what's crazy is that roughly 4 months after acquiring the Hollywood Stock Exchange, Cantor Fitzgerald's main location in New York City was obliterated during the 9/11 attacks. They were on the 102nd floor of the World Trade Center, with Lutnick being among the small handful of survivors who happened to be out of the office when the towers were struck. Wow, what a miracle. How lucky. Just like Lucky Larry. As a result of the massive loss of employees and company assets, Lutnick's efforts to merge play money prediction markets with futures trading were delayed until roughly 2007, when he and Cantor began to revive their prior efforts to pursue film futures. So, what happens? Lutnick then hires Rich Jacobs. Again, these names are going to matter because they end up coming to light later on as Polymarket really starts to get going. These people continue to resurface. So again, Rich Jacobs, who was a derivative specialist, Together with Lutnick, they mounted a congressional charm offensive. By 2010, they had managed to get approval from the CFTC. However, due to congressional opposition related to the 2008 financial crisis and also from the MPAA, their efforts were for naught. The negative mood, both in Congress and beyond, saw a clause added to the Dodd-Frank Act that saw the domestic trading of film futures explicitly banned. Yeah, that sucked for Howie. But he's got an asset that he's just sitting on, waiting for the right moment. While his efforts to legalize real money prediction markets alongside Howard Lutnick may have failed, Rich Jacobs has since become the head of market expansion for Polymarket. They don't die, they multiply. So, DARPA discovers prediction markets. Let's go back a little bit to early 2000s. Robin Hanson, who was the inventor of IDF futures, who had helped create the Foresight Exchange, got his biggest break to expand on his ideas and develop a new prediction market just a few months before Cantor Fitzgerald acquired the Hollywood Stock Exchange with the hopes of building an unconventional futures market. That break came courtesy of the Department of Defense, now the Department of War, and its sub-agency, DARPA. Sometime in the year 2000, sorry, that's a Conan O'Brien reference for all the old people. Michael Foster, a DARPA program manager working on quantum computer research backed by the National Science Foundation, learned of Hanson's efforts as well as those of the IEM, that's the first market. Foster then convinced colleagues at DARPA that their agency should fund research into prediction markets that could potentially be used to guide public policy decision-making. This was notably years before Hanson independently developed his ideas of futarchy, all right, which posits using prediction markets as a system of public governance. These ideas, again, and their relevance today are discussed in part 2 of this investigation, where they're literally going to try to get people to legislation passed based upon what was popular on Polymarket. That's what I see coming. Okay, DARPA was also interested in prediction markets for other reasons, as some of the agency's managers also believed that a prediction market could serve as an aggregation mechanism capable of bypassing bureaucratic and political obstacles to information sharing among U.S. national security agencies. This belief is directly related to efforts of those same national security agencies immediately after the 9/11 attacks to blame the siloing of information, we've seen this before, within the agencies for the supposed failure of imagination that allowed the attacks to occur despite the ostensible efforts of the U.S. intelligence apparatus and the warnings, and maybe it was an inside job, of course it was, but okay, YouTube, don't suspend my channel. This is, of course, despite the copious evidence pointing to the direct involvement of intelligence agencies in the 9/11 attacks. And she's got receipts, probably the Corbett report, there it is. All right, in the 9/11 attacks and in the efforts to stifle any meaningful investigation into those attacks. Again, we watched the 9/11 in 5 minutes a couple of months ago in the lightning round. Just one of the best pieces of work ever done on the internet. Nevertheless, the intelligence community's own narrative, backed by intelligence-linked contractors like Oracle's Larry Ellison, was that extensive information sharing between federal agencies and their main contractors was necessary to prevent another 9/11-style attack from occurring. These narratives then set the stage for the deployment of intelligence-linked software programs that were promoted as solving these problems. First, of Christine Maxwell's Chiliad. Yes, Christine being Ghislaine's sister, and followed by Peter Thiel's Palantir. Then CIA Chief Information Officer Alan Wade was closely connected to the origins of both Chiliad and Palantir. He had also been a close working partner of the DARPA office that would later host the surveillance program Total Information Awareness, a Palantir predecessor, as well as the DARPA-backed prediction market Hansen would help create. So this guy, Alan Wade, he's a behind-the-scenes guy alongside John Poindexter that pushed all of these things forward. In May of 2001, DARPA issued a request for proposals, one of which was called Electronic Market-Based Decision Support. According to an archived version of the proposal, again, she's just looking at the receipts here. So tell me how this is. What was it that this clown said? What it was? This was mental illness, right? What's mental illness here? Looking at the May 2001 DARPA issuing RFP? According to an archived version, the request sought applicants that could design one or more markets to predict events in a limited domain of interest to the DoD, and then subsequently manage that market. Contracts related to this project were awarded to two companies, one of which was Neoteric Technologies and NetExchange. Neoteric was a military contractor specializing in information technology and AI, which subcontracted a company called Martech to handle this specific proposal. Martech was a private company composed largely of the architects of that IEM, the first exchange. NetExchange was a company that focused on combinatorial markets, i.e., markets in which bundles of items are bought and sold, and in applying for DARPA funding, sought to create a combinatorial prediction market. These are the people that created the credit default swaps and the derivatives so that they could cut up bad loans and repackage them, sell them as good, and they're the ones that crashed the market, by the way, or the bankers did, using their prediction markets. Hansen, then teaching at George Mason University, as well as another George Mason professor, David Porter, were recruited to work for NetExchange's program, which would later become known as the Policy Analysis Market, or PAM. Hansen also served as the system architect for PAM. So he wasn't just any normal guy, he was the guy. Also consulted on this program was the team of tradesports.com/intrade, an Ireland-based prediction market funded by Paul Tudor Jones, Stan Druckenmiller, and Rupert Murdoch. So now you've got foreign investment and foreign-based companies getting involved in DARPA military projects. That's not good. It's then Chief Executive John Delaney, who later died while scaling Mount Everest in 2011, nothing suspicious there, told the UK's Evening Standard that it had additionally offered DARPA and PAM its data service and assistance. A year later, in 2002, Michael Foster's DARPA program, Futures Markets Applied to Prediction, or Future Map, which had included the Hansen-affiliated PAM, was placed within a newly created office at DARPA called the Information Awareness Office, the IAO. The office had been created at the behest of John Poindexter, like I said, known simultaneously for being the highest-ranking Reagan administration official convicted in relation to the Iran-Contra scandal, and also for being the godfather of modern surveillance. He's a lot less known for that. Again, that's New York Magazine from September of 2020, from Palantir, inside Thiel and Karp. Poindexter was subsequently hired as a DARPA executive and put in charge of the new office he had lobbied for, IAO. IAO's flagship program, Total Information Awareness, an unprecedented surveillance dragnet that sought to develop predictive applications for national security and law enforcement, similar to pre-crime, was also Poindexter's brainchild. The IAO also housed various projects aside from TIA, Total Information Awareness, such as Foster's Future Map program, of which Hansen's PAM was a part. So all of this is under one umbrella, all government run. But what happens is the government decides that this stuff is best run under private eyes without government oversight. So they offload it. Here we go. Just like TIA, the goal of PAM and Future Map at large was avoiding surprise and predicting future events. Whereas Total Information Awareness sought to predict terrorist and criminal activity before it could occur through mass surveillance of Americans' daily activities, PAM focused on using market-based techniques for similar ends. However, in the case of PAM, its efforts to predict events included but went far beyond terrorist activity, terrorism. PAM also sought to focus on global and regional political stability, predicting the timing and impact of emerging technologies, predicting the outcomes of advanced technology and other future events of interest to the Defense Department. Also, by the way, they are connected to the CIA, so they have unique insight into this information. All right. Hansen has noted that other areas of interest also included growth rates or oil prices. So again, we're getting back to the history of how Polymarket came to be, how it came to exist, how the government created it, how the government used it, and then decided to offload it and make it a private thing that Peter Thiel got his grubby fingers on and handed to one of his buddies. Okay, TIA and PAM, along with the vast majority of the programs housed within the IAO, were intended to interface. Put differently, PAM and other IAO programs were created with the intention of being directly connected to Total Information Awareness, aka Palantir, and to each other in order to improve the accuracy of predictions. That's being able to predict your behavior before you ever do it. This is even reflected in the logos of PAM and TIA. The IAO, or the Information Awareness Office, or Total Information Awareness logos were seeing eyes with surveillance, shows a one-eyed pyramid surveilling the entire Earth, flanked by the phrase "science is power" in Latin. The PAM logo places the pyramid within the letter A, and that pyramid, like the TIA pyramid, is also surveilling the Earth while also shooting out a beam from its opposite side that touches a market graph. So, now connect all of this to the data centers also. There's the logos. So there's your all-seeing eye looking at the world and touching a graph with a rainbow, and you got the all-seeing eye looking at the world there. PAM not only involved Hansen and the DARPA contractor that employed him, NetExchange, but also intimately involved the Economist magazine's Economist's Intelligence Unit. Also important. Why? Though most know The Economist for its media publications, the EIU offers its services to businesses and governments and provides them with forecasting and advisory services. Gartner and other companies also provide this level of forecasting. They offer, among other services, reports on the economic, political, and business environments in 205 countries to help their clients understand how the world is changing and how that creates opportunities to be seized and risks to be managed. When companies look to potentially enter a new country or a new market, they will reach out to a company like this to get a market dump of research about the country. And will their product, and then do some type of market testing to identify if their product or solution will fit in that market. All right. According to the new PAM website, The Economist Intelligence Unit was working with the Net Exchange to collect and process the data on which the securities in PAM are based, and then to assess the value of the securities when they mature. Not really a surprise. But they needed some data from the market, and they're getting that from The Economist. Coincidentally, around that time that the EIU was becoming involved with DARPA and PAM, here's a name we know, Lynn Forrester de Rothschild and her husband, Evelyn de Rothschild, who boasted close ties to figures like Henry Kissinger and Jeffrey Epstein and the Clintons, sought a 26.9% stake in The Economist's parent company, which was finalized in 2003. So now you've got the Rothschilds in control of this EIU and the reporting that it's putting out. Reportedly, due to the high cost of the EIU services per country, the designers of PAM decided to focus on 8 Middle Eastern nations for their prediction market experiment: Turkey, Syria, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Jordan, and Egypt. You know, it seems like they're all in a specific part of the world, and again, they're specifically looking at the Middle East. The intention was to have select participants engage in trading activities every 3 months for a 2-year test period to determine the prices for 5 different parameters for each nation. They included U.S. financial involvement in each, U.S. military activity in each, that nation's economic growth, the level of political instability, and its own military's activities. So you got 5 different things here. They should have bullet pointed this, made it easier. Traders were also expected to predict values for common economic indicators like GDP, as well as security indicators such as casualties resulting from terror attacks in the West and casualties of the U.S. military. Like literally, they had to. Yes, they're now expecting to predict the value. How many people were they going to lose in the next year from a terror attack? That was part of this market. The chosen traders could also trade futures on future events that might occur within any of the 8 Middle Eastern nations. None of these people might be connected to the CIA or the Mossad to engineer any of these things to actually happen so that they know that when it actually happens, what happens to the prediction markets. Nah, that could never have happened, right? I'm just speculating. Hansen expands on this in an article he later writes about PAM and its efforts, stating that traders would be allowed to predict millions of combinations of the parameters, such as how moving U.S. troops out of Saudi Arabia would affect political stability there, how that would affect stability of the neighboring nations, and how all that might change oil prices. Or maybe if they block the Strait of Hormuz, maybe they game that out. Can't imagine. Similar trades could, for example, have predicted the local and global consequences of invading Iraq had the markets already been ready at that point. Ridiculous. Yes, I agree, Natalie. This is so fucked. Okay. And this was, again, happening 20 years ago. But it got shelved because of the financial crisis. So initially, the goal was to have the select traders who used PAM be employees of the U.S. federal intelligence agencies. However, this became complicated by the legal barriers around conditional transfers of funds between federal agencies. Instead of having employees of different intelligence agencies compete, PAM then sought to recruit its traders from a single intelligence agency. However, no agency reportedly showed enough interest. Sure. As a result, they decided to open the market to select members of the public, which they were only able to do because as agents of the Defense Department, they were technically exempt from anti-gambling laws. This is insane. The architects of PAM had intended to launch test operations in September 2003 with a full launch plan for January 2004. However, that timeline got interrupted when PAM became the target of significant congressional and media criticism. In July 2003, which saw Pam publicly branded as the terrorism futures market. Yes, cookies, that's right. All of this is the precursor to Polymarket and Kalshi. This is how they had the prediction markets laid out for the Defense Department and DARPA. This is a Whitney Webb and Mark Goodwin article from Unlimited Hangout that was published last week. Okay, that's exactly what happened. So she's going into the history of prediction markets and how this all leads into Peter Thiel bringing this idea to Shane Coplin and, hey, here's an idea to create out of your garage, and then gets Defense Department support for it. But the problem here, again, was that the terrorism futures market, i.e. PAM, was intensified by the earlier scrutiny of this Total Information Awareness Program that, like PAM, was housed under that Poindexter-run department at DARPA. So on July 28, 2003, you had two Democrats, Ron Wyden, he's still around from Oregon, and Byron Dorgan, held a joint press conference where they criticized DARPA for spending millions of dollars on some kind of fantasy league terror game, which they argued was absurd and frankly ought to make every American angry. Those sympathetic to Pam's ambitions later pointed out that Wyden and Dorgan had held their press conference when DARPA's public relations manager was out of the office and unreachable, thus depriving that agency of a chance to offer a timely and informed response to the senator's allegations. Whether they knew that in advance and scheduled it to make sure that they couldn't respond accurately and quickly, I don't know, maybe. A day later, the New York Times described PAM as an online futures trading market, disclosed today by critics, in which anonymous speculators would bet on forecasting terrorist attacks, assassinations, and coups. Following the Times' lead story, a litany of negative articles quickly appeared in the nation's press shortly thereafter, and on July 29, 2003, the Pentagon announced that it would abandon its plans to make PAM a reality. Public and congressional concern over both PAM as well as Total Information resulted in Congress cutting the funding for that office entirely via legislation that was signed into law in September of 2003. So now it gets cut. And immediately, Total Information Awareness gets bought and turns into Palantir. Like within months. Hansen has since expressed his views on the events that led to the shuttering of PAM and seems to regard the efforts of Wyden and Dorgan as somewhere between misguided and outright dishonest. In addition, in a 2021 interview with Richard Hanania, not a guy I like, but still, Hansen also expressed his view that PAM had largely failed because 2 years after 9/11, people were no longer afraid enough. He stated that the following about what he described as his betting market publicity fiasco in 2003. Right? This was soon after 9/11, and just 2 years later, people looked at the betting markets and said, oh, you're betting on death? That's terrible. You have to shut them down. If they were really scared of terror attacks, if they were actually feeling a large degree of threat, they would have said, to heck with this rule against betting on death. Let's turn on these markets. Let's find out where the attacks are going to be so we can stop them. Sure. Because at that time in 2021, well, I don't know. Again, that's which guy? That's Porter, I think, or Hansen. I don't know if Hansen has a stake in Polymarket or in prediction markets at this point. But remember, we're privatizing the Information Awareness Office. All right. So that's where Peter Thiel and Poindexter's dream comes into fruition and becomes a private company that no longer has congressional oversight to worry about. While it seemed that the IAO and its controversial projects had been offed by a responsive Congress, it would emerge just a few years later the TIA was never actually shut down despite being defunded by Congress. Not only were various aspects of Total Information Awareness and other Information Awareness Office projects covertly divided among U.S. military and intelligence agencies, but the core surveillance software the TIA had planned to wield began to be developed by the private company now known as Palantir, with considerable help coming from John Poindexter himself, as well as the CIA's chief information officer at the time, Alan Wade. I mentioned that name before. Wade had notably been one of Poindexter's main allies and collaborators on total information awareness prior to its defunding by Congress. So they got the band back together. This again is another article about Palantir and Tiberius by Unlimited Hangout you should definitely read. In 2020, Unlimited Hangout detailed the numerous parallels between TIA and Palantir and noted the following: that at the time it was formally launched in February of 2003, the TIA program was immediately controversial, leading it to change its name in May 2003 to Terrorism Information Awareness in an apparent attempt to sound less like an all-encompassing domestic surveillance system and more like a tool specifically aimed at quote-unquote terrorists. Remember who they're calling the terrorists now. The TIA program was shuttered by the end of 2003. The same month as the TIA name change and with a growing backlash against the program, Peter Thiel incorporated Palantir. Thiel, however, had begun creating the software behind Palantir months in advance, though he claims he can't recall exactly when. I mean, those details are really foggy now. All right. Thiel, Karp, and other Palantir co-founders like Joe Lonsdale claimed for years that the company had been founded in 2004, despite the paperwork of Palantir's incorporation by Thiel directly contradicting this claim. They lie through their teeth. Even when the receipts show that they're lying, they don't care. They continue to double down. Also in 2003, apparently soon after Thiel formally created Palantir, arch neocon Richie Pearl called Poindexter, saying that he wanted to introduce the architect of TIA to two Silicon Valley entrepreneurs, Thiel and Karp. According to a report in New York Magazine, Poindexter was precisely the person whom Thiel and Karp wanted to meet, mainly because their new company was similar in ambition to what Poindexter had tried to create at the Pentagon, that is, total information awareness. During that meeting, Thiel and Karp sought to pick the brain of the man now widely viewed as the godfather of modern surveillance, unquote. That unholy meeting, in addition to the above parallels, there's also the added fact that Palantir's supposedly novel selective revelation functionality, an alleged privacy safeguard, as well as Palantir's immutable log concept are not novel at all and were borrowed clearly from total information awareness. It's also of note that Palantir's software stemmed from an anti-fraud algorithm called Igor, created by Thiel and Max Levchin at the company they co-founded, PayPal. Yes, PayPal Mafia. In a controversial conversation with Charlie Rose in 2013, Levchin explained that, quote, when we were working on security and anti-fraud measures at PayPal, i.e. what would become the basis for Palantir, we collaborated with every imaginable 3- and 4-letter agency, and those were some of the best, most productive relationships I've had as a business person. While Poindexter's own role in the privatization of total information awareness into what is now Palantir was recently noted, the CIA and its chief information officer, Alan Wade, were also intimately involved in privatizing TIA, which was also reported in Unlimited Hangout. I believe this again was in 2024. She reported this. Soon after Palantir's incorporation, though the exact timing and details of the investment remain hidden from the public, CIA's In-Q-Tel became the company's first backer, aside from Thiel himself giving it an estimated $2 million. In-Q-Tel's stake in Palantir would not be publicly reported until mid-2006. Why would that be? The money was certainly useful. In addition, Alex Karp recently told the New York Times that, quote, the real value of the In-Q-Tel investment was that it gave Palantir access to the CIA analysts who were its intended clients. They gave them the software in order to develop it. A key figure in the making of In-Q-Tel investments during this period, including Palantir, was CIA Chief Information Officer at the time, Alan Wade. Are we seeing a pattern here between Wade, Thiel, Poindexter, and now Karp? The CIA would continue to be intimately involved with Palantir well past this point. In fact, they became connected to such an extent that it's perfectly reasonable to argue that they are, for all intents and purposes, a CIA front company. For instance, in following the In-Q-Tel investment in Palantir shortly after it was incorporated in 2003, the CIA was Palantir's sole client until 2008, and as Carpet stated, CIA analysts were always the company's intended clients. One of the company's two top engineers, one of Palantir's top two engineers at the time, Aki Jain, recalled making hundreds of trips to CIA headquarters between 2005 and 2009, where the CIA tested and tweaked, quote unquote, Palantir's products. Palantir has since gone on to become a contractor to all 18 U.S. intelligence agencies and, of course, much more. And again, here's the military origins of Facebook. That's another talking about how it was DARPA run from LifeLog. All right, I'll go a little bit longer, then we'll cut out to some more stuff. But this is really fascinating stuff. This is great stuff from Whitney and Mark. At the same time that Peter Thiel was devising the privatization of total information awareness with his fellow Palantir co-founders, John Poindexter and Alan Wade, he was also supposedly suspiciously present in the apparent privatization of yet another DARPA project called LifeLog. Again, LifeLog at DARPA was overseen by Poindexter's close friend Douglas Gage, though it wasn't housed under the formerly Poindexter-run IAO office as TIA and PAM had been. LifeLog aimed to, and now LifeLog again was part of DARPA, right? Not IAO. Now, LifeLog aimed to build a database tracking a person's entire existence that included an individual's relationships and communications, their phone calls and mail, etc., their media consumption habits, their purchases, and much more in order to be able to build a digital record of everything an individual says, sees, or does. LifeLog would then take this unstructured data and organize it into a discrete episode or snapshots while also mapping out relationships, memories, events, and experiences. Kind of a total information awareness if you don't, if you're not paying attention. Here she pointed out in Unlimited Hangout in 2021, the information that LifeLog gleaned from an individual's every interaction with technology would be combined with the information obtained from a GPS transmitter that tracked and documented the person's location, audiovisual sensors that recorded what the person saw and said, as well as biomedical monitors like Apple Watches that gauge the person's health. Critics in mainstream media outlets and elsewhere were quick to point out that the program would inevitably be used to build profiles on dissidents as well as suspected terrorists. Combined with TIA's surveillance of individuals at multiple levels, LifeLog went further by adding physical information like how we feel and media data like what we read to this transactional data. One critic, Lee Tien of the Electronic Frontier Foundation, warned at the time that the programs DARPA was pursuing, including LifeLog, have obvious, easy paths to homeland security deployments. At the time, DARPA publicly insisted that LifeLog and TIA weren't connected. No! Despite their obvious parallels, and that LifeLog would not be used for domestic surveillance. No, it would be used for global surveillance or clandestine surveillance. No, they'd be doing it right out in the open. However, DARPA's own documentation on LifeLog noted that the project will be able to infer the user's routines, habits, and relationships with other people, organizations, places, and objects, and to exploit these patterns to ease its task. What is that task? Which acknowledged its potential use as a tool of mass surveillance. Ding, 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 ding. The cloud of scandal that had enshrouded TIA and PAM soon came for LifeLog. For instance, Stephen Aftergood of the Federation of American Scientists told Wired at the time that LifeLog has the potential to become something like TIA cubed. Unlimited Hangout's reporting on the topic continued as follows. The firestorm of criticism of LifeLog took its program manager, Doug Gage, by surprise, and Gage has continued to assert that the program's critics completely mischaracterized the goals and ambitions of the project. Sure. Despite Gage's protests and those of LifeLog's would-be researchers and other supporters, the project was publicly nixed on February 4th, 2004. DARPA never provided an explanation for its quiet move to shutter LifeLog, with a spokesman stating only that it was related to a change in priorities for the agency. On DARPA Director Tony Tether's decision to kill LifeLog, Gage later told Vice, quote, "I think he'd been burnt out so badly with TIA that he didn't want to deal with any further controversy with LifeLog. The death of LifeLog was collateral damage tied to the death of TIA," unquote. I disagree. I think Peter Thiel had his grubby hands in this with Poindexter and all their buddies to make sure that this got shuttered, shelved, stuck in a box, and offloaded to In-Q-Tel. Fortuitously, for those supporting the goals and ambitions of LifeLog, a company that turned out to be its private sector analog was born on the same day that LifeLog's cancellation was announced. How fortunate! On February 4th, 2004, what is now known as the world's largest social network, Facebook, launched its website and quickly rose to the top of the social media roost, leaving other social media companies of the era in the dust. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the main reason why Facebook was able to so quickly rise to the top of the social media roost was thanks to the early involvement of Peter Thiel and his close associates in the company. As noted recently, Thiel had been working to privatize TIA as Palantir with his co-founders, as well as John Poindexter, Doug Gage's close personal friend, all right, the very same year he became involved with Facebook. And I remember you see in the movie The Social Network, Zuckerberg and Sean Parker going to see Peter Thiel to get an angel investment of like $50,000. Unlimited Hangout's previous reporting on Facebook's origins revealed that Thiel, as well as Facebook's first president, Thiel associate Sean Parker, were critical of Facebook's commercial success. Facebook's success, in turn, has also proven critical to the success of Palantir. Why? Because a few months into Facebook's launch in June 2004, Facebook co-founders Mark Zuckerberg and Dustin Moskovitz brought Sean Parker into Facebook's executive team. Again, you saw this in the movie The Social Network, but done a little bit differently. How they had gotten Eduardo Saverin out. Parker, previously known for co-founding Napster, later connected Facebook with its first outside investor, Peter Thiel. As discussed, Thiel at that time, in coordination with the CIA, was actively trying to resurrect controversial DARPA programs that had been dismantled the previous year. Notably, Sean Parker, who became Facebook's first president, also had a history with the CIA, which recruited him at the age of 16, soon after he'd been busted by the FBI for hacking a corporate and military database. Thanks to Parker, in September 2004, Thiel formally acquired, $500,000 worth of Facebook shares. I said 50,000. It was $500,000 and was added to its board. Parker maintained close ties to Facebook as well as to Thiel, with Parker being hired as a managing partner of Thiel's Founders Fund in 2006. Yeah, Parker's dirty too. Thiel and Facebook co-founder Dustin Moskovitz became involved outside of the social network long after Facebook's rise to prominence, with Thiel's Founders Fund becoming a significant investor in Moskovitz's company, Asana, in 2012. Asana is now a huge company too. Thiel's long-standing symbiotic relationship with Facebook co-founders extends to his company, Palantir, as the data that Facebook users make public invariably winds up in Palantir's databases and helps drive the surveillance engine Palantir runs for a handful of U.S. police departments, the military, and the intelligence community. Peter Thiel was connected to another company early on that he's no longer connected to, where he's getting data that's fed into Palantir. They're called Rumble. We're streaming there right now. Don't dismiss and don't doubt that the exact same relationship that was going on with Facebook and Palantir isn't being fed from Rumble right now. Hi, Palantir. Fuck you. In the case of the Facebook Cambridge Analytica data scandal, Palantir was also involved in utilizing Facebook data to benefit the 2016 Trump presidential campaign. Yeah, they don't talk about that much. Facebook has also proven extremely beneficial to another Thiel and national security state-linked company, the facial recognition firm Clearview AI, whose facial recognition database was largely compiled by scraping images off the social media platform. Wow. Given Thiel's intimate involvement in resurrecting controversial DARPA surveillance programs from the early 2000s, i.e., Total Information Awareness and LifeLog, it's important to note that Thiel and his network were also intimately involved in the creation and success of two later efforts to resurrect the policy analysis market, the prediction market platform Augur, and more recently, the prediction market company Polymarket. Okay. I think I'm going to stop it here when we enter Shane Copland, and we now start on the Polymarket thing. Because I do have a substantial Fuck Israel segment and some other stuff to get to. Again, this article is in Unlimited Hangout.com, written by Whitney, Webb, and Mark Goodwin. There is a link in all of the chats that I just dropped to the article if you want to read the rest yourself. I'll also be including a link to this in the Substack with all the links to everything that I'm showing tonight on the show. So you can get that over at IndieMediaToday.com. Okay, so before we do anything further, I'm going to say hi to everybody real quick. Yes, Jimmy Dore does push Kelsey, so that must be cool, right? Right? No, it's not. None of it's cool. But you knew that. Anyway, support independent media like Whitney and like INN, because we need it more than ever. I don't know too many other places that are reading this article in full for everybody else, so you can basically listen to it with analysis and breakdown and a little bit of extra flavor and background that I can add from my own knowledge and reading Whitney's prior material. Ways to do that are up there. Cash App, $ Indie News Network, co-fi.com/Indie News Network. Again, thank you to Kieran Pine earlier tonight for that. PayPal.me/Indie News Network. Do that as friends and family. At patreon.com/Indie News Network for a monthly subscription. Over at IndieMediaToday.com. We're live there right now over on Substack. The network's newsletter is at INNnewsletter.com. Subscribe there, support monthly or annually. And then at IndieNewsNow.com, it's the name of the show, because it's also the name of the website where all of the links to everything you see tonight can basically be found. It's 24/7 news aggregator that pulls from more than 100 different sources and updates around the clock, ad-free. There is also links to INN merch and the Shanda Master Fuck Cancer collection, so you can pick up a t-shirt there to support the network. And there is a link to the Stripe, to a Stripe logo. do a stripe so you can donate one time if you want to. Oh my goodness. We have royalty in the house, fam. Mona, Carmona. How are you, sister? I love you. How you been? Good to see you. So good to see you. It's been ages, and I'm glad to see you here and still checking us out. Okay. I again have a semi-long fuck Israel segment. So Mona, you're here at the perfect time because Mona's one of the people that was there when I first got my knowledge and awareness about what Israel was doing to the Palestinian people. I really wasn't aware. I was raised kind of sheltered about that, and it really wasn't discussed in the community that I was in. And if so, it was a Zionist smear. I was raised by Zionists. So when I was watching Richie Medhurst in 2020 and 2021 and hanging out in Richie's Discord and in the chats, Mona was one of the people that I ended up connecting with and was incredibly close with and introduced me to so many people in the independent media space. I'm eternally grateful to her, and I adore her, and I would do anything for her she ever asked me. She also, by the way, designed Richie Medhurst's logo that he is still using. So proud of her, and some of the merch, the one with the lion. It makes me smile every time I see it, and I consider her to be a sister. Not only that, but I was there with her when she got a kidney transplant, and we used to be on the phone while she was going to dialysis, and she had a successful kidney transplant, no more dialysis. And it prepared me to understand what JB was going through when he also went through dialysis and then got his kidney transplant and was able to give him this positive success story from somebody in our world and in our space who had gone through such an ordeal. And she's an inspiration as a single mom. Her kid is over in England. Yes, I'm still paying attention. Again, I love you and appreciate you for still being around. Okay. So what's going on with fuck Israel? A few things. We've got 1,000 days of genocide in Gaza. We've got the War Crimes Archive, which I'm going to bring a video about. We've got what is going on, more live overhead shots. We're going to talk about Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya, and we're going to talk about the Palestinian goalkeeper that Israel murdered during the World Cup, which is one of the reasons why I'm boycotting it, and I've talked about that before. Before we get to that, we're going to go to some Indie Media Award honorees. Dave DeCamp over at Anti-War. It's going to be a little depressing, I'm warning you, but at the same time, we need to hear all this stuff, and not enough people continue to talk about it. No end in sight to Israel's genocidal conquest of Gaza after 1,000 days. In recent weeks, the IDF has stepped up ground ops in Gaza as Israeli ministers are vowing to take over the entire territory and now establish Jewish settlements. As I covered last week, Smotrich announced that they wanted to build 3 settlements in Gaza. Thursday marked 1,000 days since the October 7th, 2023 Hamas attack on southern Israel and the start of Israel's genocidal war in Gaza. And there's no end in sight to the destruction campaign. The senior Israeli ministers are vowing to take over the entire Palestinian territory and establish settlements despite the U.S.-backed ceasefire deal, which the IDF has constantly violated. And I appreciate that Dave regularly mentions that. Okay. In recent weeks, the IDF has ramped up its ground incursions as it's been taking more territory in Gaza, an explicit violation of that 2025 ceasefire agreement. Yet nobody pushes back and nobody fires back at them, yet they just continue to take more of it because of it. Israeli officials have now said that the IDF controls about 70% of Gaza, while the Gaza officials said on Thursday that the number was probably closer to 80%. Gaza's health ministry said on Thursday that since October 7, 2023, Israeli forces have killed at least 73,074 Palestinians in Gaza, including 1,059 who've been killed since the so-called ceasefire deal was signed last October. The ministry said that 21,730 children have been murdered including 1,078 who never even made it to their first birthday. Fuck Israel. And that is a photo from Reuters of just how bad the damage is. Okay, that's in Gaza City from June 15th. Almost a month ago already. You see tents and rubble and nothing else. There's no water. There's no electricity. There's no supplies getting in or out. The ministry said that another 173,537 Palestinians have been injured, putting the total number of Palestinian casualties close to 250,000. And that's an undercount. While the health ministry's numbers show a massive number of casualties, several studies have found that they're likely a significant undercount. I just said that, and that the real violent death toll could be as high as 100,000 alone. The U.S., of course, has kept quiet about Israel's constant violations of the ceasefire deal, as Miriam Adelson paid for the Trump campaign to do. Okay. And according to a report from Israel Hayom, that means today, the President Trump-led Board of Peace is preparing to create Hamas-free humanitarian zones, meaning Palestinian-free, in southern Gaza for Palestinian civilians as Israel continues to take territory and launch attacks while staying below the threshold of international criticism. What threshold is that? And again, how are you going to make Hamas-free humanitarian zones in southern Gaza for Palestinian civilians? Okay. Anyway, the plan sounds very similar to what Israeli officials were calling for last year when they said they wanted to create concentration camps dubbed humanitarian cities for Gaza's entire civilian population in a tiny part of southern Gaza. Three little locations, as the IDF destroyed the rest of the strip, and the ultimate goal was then to push the Palestinian civilians out of Gaza altogether and into the sea, onto boats, and either sink them or send them to Somaliland, where they have no passports and can't go anywhere either. According to Israeli media, the Israeli government has recently revived its push for the ethnic cleansing of Gaza and has rebranded it as a free movement plan. I covered this last week in an effort to gain some international support. Fuck Israel. And supportantiwar.com. I and INN are a $5 monthly subscriber and supporter of Anti-War. Again, Dave and Anti-War, both Indie Media Award honorees. Dave's not the only one talking about 1,000 Days of Gaza. Another Indie Media Award honoree, Andy Worthington, wrote a super long and detailed post about the 1,000 Days of Genocide. Okay, a detailed overview of 33 months of unforgivable horrors and how Gaza can legitimately be described as the modern-day equivalent of a Nazi death camp. All right, on Israel's depravity and lies. And this is a really long article. Again, like I said, if you click on it and you go to andyworthington.substack.com, it again is super duper long. So if I just go page down, page down, page down, page down, and it's got history, and it's got photos, and it's got receipts. So please go and patronize and support Andy. Andy's one of the best. I love Andy. Another Indie Media Award honoree. Okay. Next, I've got this one. Again, we've been talking about Lebanon, and we can't take our eyes off Lebanon because Israel continues to steal Lebanon from out from under everyone, and nobody seems to be doing anything about it, except for Lebanon signing an agreement, a memorandum of understanding with Israel that conceded the southern part of the country to the IDF indefinitely. We talked about that last week. So here we've got the IDF demolishing homes and setting up checkpoints in occupied areas of southern Lebanon. Checkpoints? I thought they weren't going to do that. Okay, the Israeli army set up checkpoints between the so-called Yellow Zone and the border area in southern Lebanon as it continues its military presence inside Lebanese territory. The yellow line is an unofficial line extending roughly 5 miles into Lebanese territory from the border imposed by Israel during its latest offensive on Lebanon. By the way, the yellow line is what they keep moving toward the sea to push the Palestinians in Gaza further toward the water and take away the space. They just keep moving that line closer and closer, cutting off the area. The Israeli army established checkpoints between the yellow zone, the border area, and the area south of the Litani River, the report said, without providing details on their nature, number, or locations. Because nobody's making them. That's why nobody's forcing them. Now remember that Israel dropped all the bridges that crossed the Litani River. So the only way you're getting across the Litani is if Israel knows it and is allowing it, and they built a bridge about it. Israeli forces also raised roads, including the road linking the Hamul area to Nakura and Aida al-Shab, and cut down trees on both sides, just because they could. They also blew up several homes in the Beit Yahun Hadatha area and in the town of Tiri in the Beit Jbil district, according to NNA. Nobody stopping them, nobody holding them to account. And other than here on this show and maybe a handful of others, you're not hearing about that anywhere in the United States. The moves came hours after Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel Katz toured areas occupied by Israel in southern Lebanon, Israeli Army radio reported. Israel has occupied parts of southern Lebanon for years, some for decades, and expanded its control during its latest offensive. Yeah, the Golan Heights, the Trump Heights, that's all part of Syria also. All right. On June 26th, Beirut and Tel Aviv signed a U.S. brokered framework agreement providing for a phased Israeli withdrawal from Lebanese territory, beginning with 2 pilot areas that were not publicly identified because they don't exist. The agreement doesn't set a withdrawal timetable, linking it instead to the Lebanese army assuming full security control in evacuated areas and the disarmament of armed groups, particularly Hezbollah, which they're not going to be able to do. We talked about that when we read the Rania Khalek article last week about this. On June 21st, Netanyahu vowed to continue holding what he considered a security zone in southern Lebanon, right? Despite a U.S.-Iran agreement that entered into force on June 18th and includes guarantees for Lebanon's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Israel didn't care about that. Since March 2nd, 2026, Israel's offensive on Lebanon has killed 4,278 people, injured another 12,196, and displaced, again, more than 1 million people. Displaced is such a sanitary word for destroyed everything you owned and made you run with the clothes on your back for your life and now live out of a tent and scramble to survive. Fuck Israel. Because all of this, why? Why are they doing all of this? Did Lebanon attack Israel? I don't remember them doing that, unless Hezbollah definitely attacked Israel for Gaza and for the West Bank. But just this is insane. All of this. And again, there's no reckoning to Israel for anything that they're doing. Now, I got an important video that I wanted to bring next. So let's watch this. This is about the Genocide Archive. And I'll go back a little bit and let's watch this.
On this app, every pastor, leader, politician who supported this genocide or failed to speak up against it should be required to look at this archive. The people who put this together, this massive body of evidence, which has 64,537 videos, 17,905 photos, did God's work. Seriously. A lot of the material was documented by journalists who sacrificed their lives to show us the truth. Some was documented by family members who should have been allowed to grieve privately, but were forced to put their grief on display to confront the world in action. And some was documented by the perpetrators themselves, laughing as they murdered children. The Israeli regime tried to bury the truth with the bodies of the innocent, but they failed. This proof exists, and this post alone has been viewed over 17 million times. I'm making this video to make sure that you know about it, because in the midst of so much deceit and denial, truth is our greatest defense, and this archive is a powerful weapon. There are
Okay. What are we talking about here? This is the Israel Exposed created an fully open sourced in order to resist censorship. So now you can download this entire database and host it on your own server to make sure that it's completely decentralized. So let's go back to the post that this was quote tweeting, because it's important to see that first. Okay. It took a little longer than expected, but we've created a website for people to view the footage collected from Gaza in one place. You no longer have to download the entire archives to see them. So that lady listed out all the different things that are included. It can be accessed at archivegenocide.com. Please share and quote tweet to help this post break out of the Twitter algorithm prison. We'll keep adding the rest of the archives to the site. Be patient. It's difficult work. They have a Telegram. Zionism Exposed is the account. Okay, Exposed AR is another one. Israel Exposed is another one. That's the one that I follow. So, what is this? Let's go back. Is they decided to make it totally open source. Let me go back. What you will need is a copy of the media files, 806 gigabytes, which can be found in the download section here. You'll need a copy of the source files, which a GitHub link will be provided soon. Their cryptographic signature key to verify that the files are authentic and came from them and are not tampered with, which you can find there. And instructions on how to plug and play are in the downloads page. Please download the media files while we prepare the source code to share publicly. All right. Also, please seed this new torrent even above all the other torrents, as it is the condensed version of all these archives. Okay, we have multiple mirrors ready to go, so there's likely no need for you guys to start launching your own site mirrors yet. This is just a precautionary measure they're taking. Tech giants are taking this seriously, so should we. All right. So, really important that now all of Israel's war crimes are fully documented and archived, and there's Savvy saying thank you, and available. Let's reshare this also so people see it. Available for download, display, and for educational purposes. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya. And I've been talking about Dr. Safiya now for too long. For 19 months. He was taken in December of 2024. And we're going to show some of that footage here. This is Nicole Janae. She's with Now Daily, NOOW. This, I showed a couple of the videos a couple weeks ago. This is one that she actually put out this morning. I'm like, well, she's saying it just as well as I could, and she delivers it a lot better than I could with a cute accent too. So let's listen to what Nicole has to say. Oh, muted. What happened? What? Why can't I hear her? Did my headphones die? I think my headphones died. No audio on their end. Okay, nobody hears it. What the hell? Okay. That's weird. Let me pause this. Pause. Okay, back out. Why isn't this working? It should be. What the heck? I watched this earlier. It was great. I think there's a way to do this on Twitter too. Well, let's watch it on Twitter. Here's Nicole's video.
Kill me. I don't see myself surviving. Those are the words of Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya a few days ago. The director of Kemal Adwan Hospital in Gaza, a pediatrician turned hostage, now tortured underground in an Israeli specialized interrogation hell. His lawyer barely recognized him, covered in fresh, raw wounds. The coward occupation of the Israeli regime, it's kidnapping doctors from hospital wards.
Here he is walking into the
because
tank.
a Dr. White coat in Gaza is just a high visibility target for a sniper, holding him with 0 charges for 19 long and agonizing months. No trial, no evidence, no justice. Just pure, unfiltered evil. And what is his ultimate crime? Being a doctor who saves the lives they want to kill. On June 10th, 2026, we saw Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya in court, an innocent man rightfully appealing for his freedom. As expected from the murderous regime of Israel, they denied him, while the world watched in complicity. Because make no mistake, complicity isn't just standing by, it's the armor of the oppressor. So the prison guards celebrated. 4 or 5 masked men entered his dark, solitary cell with a heavy iron hammer and thick wooden bars. They broke his aging body again to punish his audacity for existing. They beat him to unconsciousness because a Palestinian savior must be crushed into the dust. Let's look back at December 2024. Kemal Adwan Hospital in Gaza was a smoking ruin, an apocalyptic nightmare of tanks. An airstrike already took one of Dr. Abu Safiya's sons. But the doctor refused to run. He stayed to patch up children while the world watched on live stream. Then the killing machine of the Israeli occupation forces kidnapped him, labeling a pediatrician as a terrorist without a single shred of proof. Because in this global theater, accusations are the new convictions. But he's not alone. There are thousands like him, an assembly line of hostages locked away in secret dungeons, including a terrifying number of children, while the civilized world clutches their pearls only not to disturb the silence. And those who claim to be allies stage a loud, empty theater, performing just enough outrage to feel righteous, because the outrage sells, but the true solidarity costs too much, no? You ignored his desperate cries, and your silence, it's a betrayal. The occupation tortures Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya. They block every investigative journalist, but they know exactly what they are doing. And if you think your armor is permanent, Israeli regime, you're dead wrong. You're a spoiled, untouchable brat. They block, you think, shielded by the American weapons and vetoes, hiding behind ancient myths of exceptionalism, while acting with pure evil and cowardice malice. You torture and kill so many people, so many doctors and journalists, every Palestinian if you could. You hold them hostages because in reality you're absolutely terrified. You cannot stand their moral weight. You cannot stand his moral weight. A pediatrician who stayed in hell to show what true love looks like. You're just a fragile, jealous machine, desperate to break what you cannot own. You see the world's love for him and it drives you in insane rage. So you lock him underground, hoping that darkness will erase your evil. But hear this out loud on the behalf of the whole world. No matter how much impunity you gorge, you're not going to get away with it. When the empire shield will finally crack, there will be no sanctuary left for you. Even when nobody's watching, God, it is. You will answer for every hammer blow. So everybody, understand that we need to shout until it becomes a reality. Free Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya and all the hostages held in the murderous Israeli regime dungeons.
Like this new show that she's been doing. You know, the real lefty news. And nobody's really tried to do this in a long time. So I give them credit for at least trying to pull this off. And I zero lies detected in all of that she said. Just your outrage and while we all sit and watch, this man is being tortured. And I hope that we free him. And I have doubts, but you know, right now the alarm has been sounded by everyone, including Indie Media Award honoree Eva Bartlett, okay, who's been one of the people that I learned about Dr. Safiya from. Eva Bartlett and Yipeng Ji, who served alongside him in Gaza at Kamal Adwan Hospital. All right, this is the end. From an inside underground Israeli detention facility with his features barely recognizable after severe beatings. That was after his appeal last month. Palestinian doctor Hussam Abu Safiya said he has been transferred to another prison in preparation for his execution. The International Committee of the Red Cross must visit Dr. Abu Safiya immediately and ensure his safety, which Israel has no intention of ensuring. The world must not allow yet another doctor to be killed. This was a video about him from Euromed Monitor, Human Rights Monitor. I wanted to play this one as well. And again, I don't think this is a surprise to anyone, but let's...
That a doctor, a brilliant pediatrician, had been taken hostage and tortured for the last 18 months and was now at the very end of being able to endure anymore physically, mentally, and that he had appealed to his lawyer to get those across the world to reach out to those in power to do something, because he felt he was very, very, very close to the end. Yeah. What would you say? What would you do? Would you say, oh, God, yes, what can we do? This poor man, that's outrageous. Pediatrician, a doctor, taken hostage, tortured. God, yeah, of course. But if I were then to tell you that he's a Palestinian pediatrician, would you still have the same response? Because that's who Dr. Abu Safiya is. He's a Palestinian pediatrician and he can't take any more. His lawyer, who saw him a few days ago, said he's now unrecognisable from the beatings that he's taken, and this has been 18 months of this. So, yeah, if you can still feel the same thing, now knowing that he's Palestinian, it'd be amazing if you clicked on the link in my bio, and it's so easy, only takes a minute or so, and it will, in one fell swoop, reach out to those that do have the power to speak up and say something. Whether they choose to or not is another matter, because that's the government that we've got at the moment. But we should still do everything that we can, right? Thanks.
Diddy is a monster.
Hey, okay, he's funny. By the way, Josh Johnson, very funny comedian. If you watch him on Facebook, but yeah, that's, imagine that he were anything but a Palestinian doctor, and that this were happening to the imprisonment and torture for treating children, and he were imprisoned and beaten regularly for it, and now being threatened with execution. And Natalie says, imagine, or Cookies, imagine the outrage if the roles were reversed. Imagine the 24-hour news feed of the victims of Hamas. Could you imagine Hamas were actually imprisoning and beating Israeli doctors, Jewish doctors? Oh my God, yeah. 24/7 blanket coverage. Again, I'm going to go back to our friend and Indie Media Award honoree Andy Worthington. Please take action for Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya, whose lawyer has reported that he fears that his Israeli captors intend to kill him. This new website has links for you to swamp Israeli officials and Western politicians with emails. SaveDrAbuSafiya.com. And again, I'll put all of these links to this tweet and every video and everything I've shown tonight in the Substack description after the show. Yes, and that is right, Wesley. Sometimes the fuck Israel must continue, Kate. Fuck Israel. And yeah, it's just this doctor that they're just torturing and they're stretching this out. I have seen that there has been a massive outpouring of support for him this week for some reason, as opposed to prior times when there has been a call for people to raise their voices. Again, some of us have been doing that regularly anyway, and I'm glad to see other people join us in that fight and in screaming loudly that this is one of the worst war crimes you can imagine. This is a doctor that fixes up kids and has already lost his own kid and was treating kids without anesthesia and patching them up, which of course is exactly what Israel doesn't want. Free Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya and fuck Israel. Another reason, fuck Israel and fuck FIFA. A lot of you have been watching the World Cup. I did a whole story about why I'm boycotting the World Cup, and this only further reinforced it. And that would be that on Thursday, July 2nd, Palestinian goalkeeper Salim al-Aqshar had been killed by Israeli forces in Gaza. He leaves behind his wife of 5 months who is expecting their first child. A little bit more about him. He had been married for only 5 months. His wife is pregnant with their first kid, a baby he'll never meet. A young man whose job was to protect his goal became another target. 1,009 Palestinian sports figures have been killed since October of 2023. 567 from football alone. While the world watches the World Cup, Palestinian athletes keep getting murdered by Israel and U.S. bombs and British surveillance. Fuck Israel and the United States and everybody that's enabling her. And this woman perfectly summed up from the Croatian crowd. Shout out to our brother Mad Crab. This lady, fuck you! She screamed very loudly and clearly and became a meme overnight. Love it. All right. And then finally, we did talk last week about Itamar Ben-Gvir and his planned trip to New York City. Well, a significant victory. He canceled his New York visit after the Human Rights Foundation and Center for Constitutional Rights called on New York Attorney General Letitia James to prosecute him for war crimes, potentially. So I went to this gentleman, Diab Abu Jaja, who, by the way, is the director of the Hind Rajab Foundation. If you don't know what that is, you should. This is one of the most important activist organizations in the world that's working to get Israeli war criminals arrested and tried in foreign countries when they go on vacation. On the 4th of July, this is our present to the American people. We prevented Ben-Gvir from spreading his Zio-Nazi genocidal venom there. He was afraid to face our legal action, even in the country where Israeli war criminals enjoy the greatest impunity. Step by step, justice will come. I sure hope so. But here, this was from literally the Hind Rajab Foundation. Okay. So, shout out to the Hind Rajab Foundation for that and their work in, again, seeing IDF soldiers, war criminals brought to justice. All right. Okay. So finally, I think that was it. And that was only because, and that's just a footnote. Now, I had a conversation with Reef about this. Reef's feeling was that Ben-Gvir now could use this and say, well, it was the lefties in the United States, the anti-Zionist movement that stopped me from wanting to go there. And, well, we've got to further ramp up against the anti-Zionists because, the United States isn't even a safe place for an Israeli war criminal to travel at this point. So, of course, they're going to have to ramp up authoritarianism and surveillance and anti-Palestinian, and anti-Palestinian activity in the city. Jessica Tisch, the New York Police Department commissioner, is very closely tied with the IDF and with Israel. And so it would not surprise me to see some kind of a backlash retaliation as a result of him claiming to be too afraid of being prosecuted to attend these proceedings in the United States. Okay. Fuck him and fuck Israel. But thank you for sticking with me through the fuck Israel stuff. I still have a lightning round. It's midnight Eastern on the East Coast. Happy Wednesday to everybody who's watching. And thank you for sticking with me. Okay, support independent media because we need it more than ever. YouTube certainly doesn't like when we do stories like that. We are remonetized, but we're heavily suppressed everywhere. So please share wherever you can if you can. Or you can also support financially. Cash App, $ Indie News Network, at ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, over at paypal.me/Indie News Network as friends and family to avoid the fees, at patreon.com/Indie News Network for monthly or annually or monthly over at IndieMediaToday.com or INNNewsletter.com. Those are housed over on Substack. And finally, we have our self-hosted website, IndieNewsNow.com. It's the name of the show because a lot of the articles and videos and things that you've seen tonight, you could have found a link to on IndieNewsNow.com. There's also a link to the merch store. There's also a link to our Stripe where you can support the network financially and leave a tip there directly for us as well. All right. I got a few stories I'm going to buzz through quickly, and then we'll do the GoFundMes, and we'll get out of here for the night. So first, union busters are going after Matt Bruning. I've done a couple of stories from Matt Bruning on the show. We're going to talk about the EU and their authoritarianism ramp up to the point where it's now going to be a crime to repost an RT tweet in the EU. Yes. The UK further ramping up their authoritarianism over YouTube to prioritize BBC and corporate news there. And then a little bit about Andy Burnham, who's the new prime minister taking over for Keir Starmer, who resigned, who stepped down as the Labour leader and the prime minister. So the first one, again, this, and Natalie, I think you're going to want to read this one. This is about Fred Hutch. Fred Hutch being the hospital that our dear sister Shanda was treated at. And this is about the nurses that are trying to unionize and organize. And the Fred Hutch leadership then created a website to union bust and to try to advise the employees against unionizing and to obfuscate and misconstrue facts. Well, Matt Bruning set up a counter website to address all of these concerns, and then was served with legal action by Fred Hutch for copyright infringement because he used the Fred Hutch font and color scheme, for example, on the website. So he changed that to accommodate them. But of course, they didn't really have a problem with his using the logo. They had a problem with his countering all of their points. So we're definitely going to want to read this one. But I wanted to bring this. This almost became a fourth story, but I had a feeling we were going to run long. So this became part of a lightning round. And I encourage everyone to go read this themselves. Next, again, we're going to talk about the EU making it illegal to repost clips from RT. Even broadcasting the Russian network is now a crime, according to the EU. This is our friend, the dissident, one of the co-founders of INN, at the 307.substack.com. The EU has officially ruled that it is a criminal offense for a blogger to post clips or content from RT, the Russian state broadcaster, no matter what the content is or how newsworthy it is. Insane. In 2023, German authorities seized the independent website Traugot Ikaroth and accused its founders of violating economic sanctions because the blog shared RT videos on 3 occasions in 2023. Crazy. But yeah, now they're so rabidly against and afraid of anybody hearing what's on RT that now they're literally banning you from being able to hear what's being said. And yes, Wesley, the EU has become a real dystopia. And yes, Natalie, fuckers, meaning the Fred Hutch people, agreed. So again, I'm going to link this afterwards to go read The Dissident at the307.substack.com. Good friend and buddy of the show. Adding to that crazy authoritarianism, the UK government, now remember the UK is no longer part of the EU thanks to Brexit. The UK government has decided through legislation that they are going to take control of YouTube's algorithm. And notice I hate these accounts that start with breaking. But this one actually had good information with screenshots. This is pure authoritarianism. Keir Starmer and now Andy Burnham's government is set to control the YouTube algorithm by law, stipulating that YouTube must push approved content to UK citizens. What? Yeah. And independent voices who criticize the government will be pushed to the back of the queue, making it harder for people to find. YouTube has acknowledged that this is happening. This must be stopped. According to YouTube, the UK government is running a public consultation called Watch This Space, a new strategic direction for UK media. The proposals include mandatory changes to how content is discovered on YouTube. This could direct audiences away from your channel. As a UK creator, this directly impacts your future. The digital content discovery works best when driven by user choice, not legal requirements. This is a vital window for you to share your perspective before the consultation closes at the end of August. Guess who gets to decide, Wesley? It ain't going to be us. All right. The new proposed rules include a mandatory prominence regime. Literally. This could require digital platforms like YouTube to prioritize and privileged position traditional broadcasters like BBC, ITV, and Channel 4 in user interfaces and recommendation feeds, potentially pushing your independent content out of sight. Mandating prominence to traditional institutions will impact all other independent digital creators, production companies, and media companies, including through your content being downranked, reducing user exposure to diverse content and independent creators, threat to reach and channel growth, and undermining the creator-audience bond. YouTube is against this. But if the law dictates, they have no choice but to either comply or exit the UK. Now they're moving to YouTube, right? So that's the third thing I wanted to talk about. The fourth one is the new Prime Minister, Andy Burnham. In case you were hoping that things were going to be any different with a new prime minister, think again. Liam Cunningham, who was on one of the Gaza flotillas, or a couple of them, actor, I think from Game of Thrones, Andy Burnham joined Labour Friends of Israel in 2015. Same shit, different day. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Let's get a little further into it from Dr. Nina Jah. Andy Burnham joined Labour Friends of Israel in 2015, said the first place he'd visit as leader would be Israel, refused to call what's happening in Gaza a genocide, and therefore he's caused the conservatives to call him like pro-Palestinian. He also opposes the BDS movement, calling it spiteful. He's not pro-Palestinian. He's part of the Labour Friends of Israel. He's just not denouncing the fact that you're calling it a genocide. He won't denounce he won't call it a genocide, and he also won't say that it's not a genocide. And that's got the Israelis and their supporters all pissed off. Yes, that's right, Cookies. This is all for narrative control. They want to control what you watch. They want to watch what you say. They want to take away any form of anonymity to punish anyone who disagrees with the narrative. Absolutely. 100% that's what's coming. The players change, the game stays the same. So now they're implementing positioning corporate/state media at the top of YouTube, right? While also outlawing opposing state media or any counter narrative. Finally, I wanted to make mention of one other thing, that there's another Twitter account that I created a long time ago at IndieNewsN, like Indie News Network. This immediately got shadow banned when I first created it a long time ago, and it got suspended. And I appealed, and I'm like, we didn't do anything wrong. I literally linked it to the INN Gmail account, and it never even tweeted. So I don't know why it got suspended, but now now this account has been reinstated. It's made 20 posts, but if I like anything or I follow somebody, like you'll notice here that I am following Fred Edward and I'm following Robbie Yeager. Robbie never got a notification that this account followed him, nor did I, and I followed it myself. Insane. This account is already shadow banned, and it's barely even gotten off the ground. I was going to use this as a way to exclusively feature INN content, maybe. I'm not really sure. But it's just another account that we have that there's no reason we should not have and have access to. Oh, look at that. And now the 2 followers that we had are now gone. How? Let's see. If I refresh it, will there be followers? Let's see. I don't know. It's ridiculous. No followers. There have been at least 4 people that have followed this account. Myself, INN, Reef, and Angel Rivera. At least. But it's showing no followers. This is outright blatant censorship and suppression. And I'm calling it out and showing you in real time how it's happening. Fuck Twitter. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. Because we can't even get a tweet shown publicly or an alert for something that we like and actually do. All right. The ways to do that are there. I appreciate everyone that's able to do that. I understand not everyone can, but if you're able to and it means, if not, share the show wherever you can and tell somebody about it. And if you are, Cash App, $, Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network, patreon.com/Indie News Network as monthly, and then indiemediatoday.com and INNnewsletter.com over on Substack, and at IndieNewsNow.com at our own self-hosted WordPress website. Okay, finally, we're going to get to the GoFundMes real quick. Yes, I get that no, I'm not expecting good behavior from Twitter, and I wish that I could say, it's so old school, move on, except that there's still a lot of things that happen on Twitter that don't happen anywhere else, or that happen first on Twitter. It's still the public square where the most people fight and argue, and it's honestly less censorious than Blue Sky. Substack is probably a lot less censorious than them, but they've got a minuscule fraction of the audience. Twitter still has 500 million people using this site every month, at least. I mean, it's massive. All right. But I did want to get to the GoFundMes, where we're going to talk about Words of Will and their GoFundMe. All right. His wife has breast cancer. Again, he's not even doing DoorDash anymore. He's hoping to take a class later on this summer or to do an apprenticeship so that he can get more steady work. And in the meantime, they're just doing what they can to get by, and they're hoping for the generosity of kindness of strangers and family to get them through. And they could really use the help. Again, this is Words of Will, has been a friend and supporter of INN since we founded the network. Back in May, he reached out and asked me to share his GoFundMe because his wife got diagnosed with breast cancer. This is their 2 boys. They also have no insurance right now. They got dropped because she lost her full-time work, had to take part-time hours. They've raised over $4,000, but their goal is over $8,000. So they still need help getting there. And anything that you can do to help, I appreciate personally. And again, here's a link to share if they're... You're right, OMB. I need to do the arms raised thing. You're absolutely right. Next GoFundMe I wanted to bring up again, and Cowboy Kenny mentioned it on Sunday night on Boat Smashing Into Other Boats, that it's now been 1 year since Natalia, his sister-in-law, was taken by ICE, okay, and kept in an ICE facility and is being paid by the federal government every week or every night for that bed to keep her housed while she appeals her asylum that she had already received, but now she's been ordered to be deported, though she should not be. She's living in substandard conditions in this prison in Ohio. She's the only one that speaks her language there. The food sucks. The people go in and out. The guards suck. I mean, it's prison. So, and it's an ICE facility. It's a processing facility. It's not really a prison. So they don't even have all the facilities and all the things that a prison normally does. But again, this was set up for the legal defense. She's been here 9 years legally, currently in the process of applying for a green card, working and paying taxes as a box truck driver and taking care of her daughter. Again, over $2,200 was raised. Anything that we can do to help up that and to get them some money to get themselves through. Again, it's been a year. A year. Why? For profit, that's why. Because Core Civic or Geo Group, whichever company owns that private prison facility, and the county that's housing her are getting paid out by the federal government to keep her there. So it's in everyone's financial interests to keep her locked up, sadly. All right. Then we've got Aspen. And I messaged with Halo this week, and I have to catch up with her on the phone. I owe her a phone call. I love you, Halo. I'm sorry for not calling you back. Last October, we did a live stream fundraiser talking about justice for Aspen. In middle of October, I interviewed Aspen and her mom, Halo, who were Julian Assange activists for the Oklahoma for Assange chapter. By the way, Julian Assange had a birthday this past week. He turned 55. Happy birthday, Julian. Thank God you're out. And shout out to all the activists that worked to get him out. Aspen, a little over a year ago, I've told this story too many times already, was in the wrong car at the wrong time in the wrong place and got arrested with someone in a vehicle who was arrested with mass quantities of drugs and charged with drug trafficking, as was Halo's daughter, Aspen. Aspen didn't know the drugs were there. She's autistic. She's vegetarian. She will not do well in a prison like this. We need to find a way to get her out of all of this. Even the person driving the RV admitted he knew nothing about this and wasn't linked to it. But they, of course, don't care about that. They don't necessarily believe it. We need to get expert witnesses and experts to testify that she had no knowledge and that this prison system could be a death sentence for her. Again, Dissent in Bloom wrote a great article about her story last year. You can read this again at her link tree, linktr.ee/justice and the number 4 Aspen. So yeah, what a mess. Please. So support Aspen if you can. Finally, again, and then Aspen, of course, has a GoFundMe, which I've asked for her mom to up. It looks like she hasn't upped it yet. And I think she said she doesn't want to jinx it. That things have just been kind of quiet, but I don't think that that's really, I don't know. I'll talk to her about that, but I think that we need to up it so that people know that we still have gold to get to there. And I think that the the donations have stopped because it looks like they've hit their goal, but they haven't. They're going to need a lot more money to fund this defense. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about Shanda, of course. Our beloved Shanda Master, rest in power. We watched and talked about her struggle and her battle through small cell lung cancer, and then her then subsequent spreading of that cancer throughout. And she lost that battle in April. It's been more than 3 months now, and we're still kind of trying to figure out, trying to deal with all that. And I created a merch store, or more merch items, a section in our merch store for putting the Shanda Master Fuck Cancer collection in the shop. I've actually added that to her Indie Media Awards page, which I updated this week. Added a photo of the sweatshirt, the hoodie sweatshirt that Oz bought, and the t-shirt. And man, what a loss still. And again, hopefully Oz is planning on doing a live stream next Saturday night, the 11th. There's some surprises in store. I'm looking forward to seeing that. And again, if you want to go to the Indie News shop and order yourself a t-shirt or a hoodie or a tank top, the place to do that is here. You can go to IndieNewsNow.com and you can click on the merch link and get there, or I'll drop a link in all the chats. Any of the profits will be given to Shanda's family or to a cancer charity. One other thing I wanted to note, everyone who's known INN and been around INN for a long time knows Yeti Jesus, our friend Yeti. Well, Yeti, I don't know if many of you know, was actually the recipient of a heart transplant back in the 90s. He was one of the first. And it was like all written up in newspapers and stuff back then. Well, he was apparently on the list for years to get a new donor heart. And this week they got the call and he had heart replacement surgery. So he's got a new ticker now. That's our brother Yeti. So shout out to Yeti for going through, literally, he's got a new heart in there, a new ticker, new lease on life. And we love you, man. And get well soon. And it's pretty wild. Yeah. How about that, Cookies? But he's doing great. And I've been staying in touch with his wife, Shauna, throughout the entire 4 days. She was like a rock and a champ and keeping us all updated. And now Yeti's on the mend on his way back. So yeah, good for Yeti. And he's got a new ticker, and hopefully he'll be all right for a long time. All right, fam. So that's it for me. Again, it's been a hell of a week. I'm kind of spent for tonight. I love you all, and I appreciate you hanging out. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. And you know what to do. Like, share, subscribe. No! We just fucking lost the stream! Night, everybody.
Who are these people?
I think I liked it better being blind, when I couldn't read between the lines, and when I couldn't see the cracks in the structure that lay bare before me the whole time. I think I liked it better back when I suspended disbelief and swallowed pride. I thought I knew the difference in the red from the blue, but they both bleed us so dry. They both bleed us so dry.
My favorite songs don't hit the same way. I get to the end of a 4-minute track and I'm only looking back thinking, what did they actually say? So
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say?